Miracles in the Mundane, Witnessing God's Unseen Hand. Welcome to Faith Frontiers, the podcast where we dive deep into the spiritual realms that guide, shape, and sometimes completely transform our lives. I'm your host, Clint, and today, we're embarking on a profound exploration of a theme that resonates deeply across all walks of faith: the power of God's unexpected miracles. In today's episode, inspired by the rich theological insights of C.S Lewis, we will discuss how God's hand is often most visible not in the unblemished stretches of our journey, but in the moments of our deepest despair. Whether you are facing a tough challenge, feeling lost in the shuffle of daily life, or simply in need of a reminder of the divine presence that surrounds us, this episode is for you. We'll explore the divine power that surpasses human understanding, delve into the importance of faith and trust in the Almighty, and share incredible true stories of God's intervention in times of human despair. Our discussion will not only highlight the miracles that shake the earth, but also those quiet, tender moments of divine intervention that can easily go unnoticed. As we go through today's enlightening discussion, I encourage you not only to listen, but to engage with us. If you find this episode uplifting or enlightening, please like it, share it with friends and family who might also benefit, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. And of course, we love hearing from you, so please leave a comment below with your thoughts or any experiences with miracles in your own life. And now, without further ado, let's dive into the heart of today's topic: the unexpected and often unseen miracles of God. Divine power beyond human understanding. As we delve into our first segment, let's reflect on the sheer magnitude of divine power, a concept that transcends the limits of human comprehension. This power is not just a theoretical idea, it's a fundamental aspect of the universe, a force that orchestrates the very fabric of existence.
Indeed, the Bible gives us profound insights into the nature of God's power. In the book of Job, chapter 26, verse 14, it states, "Behold, these are but the outskirts of his ways, and how small a whisper do we hear of him? But the thunder of his power, who can understand?" This verse beautifully encapsulates the mystery and immensity of God's capabilities, reminding us that what we perceive is only a fraction of his true might.
That's a powerful passage. It really emphasizes how what we see and understand is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to God's power that remains beyond our grasp.
Exactly. And this isn't just about the vastness of the universe or the forces of nature, but also about the intimate ways in which God interacts with his creation. Isaiah 55:9 echoes this by saying, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This disparity between divine and human understanding isn't a barrier, rather, it's a bridge inviting us to trust and believe in his infinite wisdom.
Trusting in that wisdom can be challenging, especially when faced with difficulties or when things don't go as planned. But it's in these moments that faith becomes crucial. It's about believing in God's omnipotence and his benevolent plan for us, even when we can't see the full picture.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the concept of miracles. Miracles are often God's way of manifesting his power in our lives in the most unexpected ways. They serve as reminders that his reach extends far beyond our understanding and control. As we see in Luke 1:37, "For nothing will be impossible with God." This assurance is the cornerstone of our faith in his miraculous abilities.
That verse from Luke really sets the stage for our next discussion point. It's about how this incredible power isn't just a distant force, it's actively involved in our daily lives, ready to perform miracles when we least expect them.
And as we transition into our next segment on faith and trusting God, let's keep that thought in mind. Faith isn't just about expecting the expected, it's about opening our hearts to the unexpected, trusting that God's ways, though higher than our own, are always aimed at our ultimate good.
Beautifully said. Let's delve deeper into that trust and faith. especially how it shapes our daily walk with God. Faith and trust in God. As we continue our exploration, we shift our focus to the vital roles of faith and trust in our relationship with God. Faith isn't just believing in God's existence, it's about trusting in His sovereignty and goodness, especially in the face of life's uncertainties.
That's right. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. This passage reminds us that faith involves a deep-seated confidence in God, even when the outcomes aren't visible or immediately understandable.
It's interesting how faith and trust are intertwined. Trusting in God means letting go of our need to control every outcome and understanding that His plans are greater than ours. C.S. Lewis highlighted this beautifully in his writings, suggesting that real trust isn't passive, it's an active surrender to God's will.
Absolutely. This kind of surrender is vividly portrayed in Proverbs 3:5-6, where we are instructed to trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. This doesn't mean that challenges won't come, but it assures us that God is in control and orchestrating things for our benefit.
And that assurance provides such a strong foundation when the storms of life hit. It's like building your house on solid rock rather than on shifting sand. When we truly trust in God, we gain a peace that, as Philippians 4:7 describes, surpasses all understanding. This peace guards our hearts and minds, enabling us to remain steadfast regardless of the circumstances.
Indeed, and it's this peace that also allows us to face challenges with courage. Remember the story of David and Goliath. David's faith in God was his greatest weapon. He faced a literal giant, but his trust wasn't in his own strength, it was in God's power. As David said in 1 Samuel 17:45, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied."
That story is a perfect example of how faith can empower us to face seemingly insurmountable challenges. It's not about the size of the obstacles in front of us, but the size of our faith in God.
And let's not forget, faith also involves patience. It teaches us to wait on God's timing. Isaiah 40:31 offers us this promise. "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Waiting isn't passive, it's an active trust that God is working, even when we can't see it.
That's a powerful reminder for us all. As we wrap up this segment, let's carry forward the truth that our faith and trust in God are not just spiritual concepts, but are practical, daily acts of surrender that guide us through every aspect of life.
And as we move into our next segment on human despair and God's intervention, we'll see how these acts of faith are tested and strengthened in the crucible of real-life struggles.
Stay with us as we explore how God meets us in our lowest points and uses our trials for greater purposes. Welcome back to Faith Frontiers. As we journey deeper into the theme of God's unexpected miracles, we arrive at a poignant chapter in our discussion, Human Despair and God's Divine Intervention. It's in our deepest valleys that God's work often becomes the most visible.
That's so true. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Problem of Pain, delves into the paradox of suffering, emphasizing that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world.
It's a compelling way to view suffering, not as mere misfortune, but as a profound opportunity for divine communication. Can you share how this perspective shifts our understanding of despair?
Absolutely. When we face despair, our usual responses might range from confusion to outright resistance. Yet, Scripture invites us to a different response. In the book of James, chapter 1, verses 2-4, we read, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This passage doesn't diminish the pain of our trials, but reframes them as vital to our spiritual growth and maturity.
That's a profound invitation to see our darkest moments through the lens of growth and divine presence. How does this perspective help individuals in their darkest moments?
It offers a sense of purpose in the pain. Instead of feeling punished or abandoned, we can understand that God is actively present, refining us through our struggles. As we navigate through the waters of despair, we're promised that God is with us, molding our character and deepening our faith. Isaiah 43:2 reassures us with these words, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you."
Those are incredibly comforting words. They don't promise an absence of trouble, but do promise that we won't face it alone. Can you share a story or an example where this promise has been evident?
Certainly. I recall the story of a woman who faced severe illness and financial ruin. Her despair seemed complete, a valley too deep to escape. Yet, in her darkest moments, she found an unexpected strength and a new community ready to support her both spiritually and materially. It was a clear instance of God making a way where there seemed to be none, embodying the promise of 2 Corinthians 4:8-9. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Her journey through despair led to a stronger faith and a testimony that has inspired many.
That's a powerful example of how God's intervention can transform personal despair into a story of hope and renewal. As we reflect on such stories, it's clear that God doesn't just change our circumstances, He changes us.
Exactly, and that's the heart of divine intervention. It's not merely about altering our situations, but about transforming our hearts and minds, aligning them closer to God's will and purpose.
As we move to our next segment on surrendering to God's will, we'll explore how letting go of our plans and embracing God's direction can lead to unexpected miracles in our lives. Welcome back. As we continue our exploration of divine intervention and the power of miracles, we now turn to a critical aspect of our spiritual journey, surrendering to God's will. This isn't always easy, but it is essential for experiencing the fullness of God's work in our lives.
Absolutely. Surrender is a fundamental theme in both the Bible and C.S. Lewis's writings. Lewis argued that surrender is not a passive resignation, but an active engagement with God's will. It involves relinquishing our own plans and desires to embrace what God has in store for us, even when it's unexpected or challenging.
That's a transformative way to look at it. Could you share some biblical insights on this concept?
Certainly. A great example is found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 39. During a moment of profound distress, Jesus prays in Gethsemane, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." This prayer reflects the essence of true surrender, acknowledging our desires, but prioritizing God's will above all.
It's a powerful testament to the strength that surrender can bring. How does this surrender play out in everyday life for believers?
In everyday life, surrender might look like taking an unexpected job offer that initially doesn't seem ideal, but later turns out to be a perfect fit. Or it could mean staying in a challenging situation to help others when it would be easier to walk away. It's about trusting that God sees the bigger picture and has our best interests at heart.
That trust can be challenging to maintain, especially when the path forward isn't clear. Are there practices or mindsets that can help believers cultivate a spirit of surrender?
Prayer is key. Regularly communicating with God, and seeking His guidance helps align our hearts with His. Additionally, studying Scripture can reinforce our understanding of God's character and promises, which builds trust. Psalm 37, 5-6 offers this encouragement. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday.
These scriptures not only offer comfort, but also direction. They show that surrender isn't about losing control, but gaining a different kind of strength, one that comes from divine assurance.
Exactly. And this act of surrender can lead to profound miracles in our lives. When we let go and allow God to lead, we open ourselves to the unexpected. We become vessels through which His power can manifest, leading to outcomes we couldn't have imagined.
Could you share a story where surrender led to an unexpected miracle?
Yes, there's a story about a family who was struggling to find a community where they felt they belonged. They had moved several times, each time with hopes that dwindled until they finally decided to stop moving and surrender their situation to God. Remarkably, once they stopped striving on their own, they discovered an incredible support network right where they were. It was as if the community appeared because they had finally surrendered their own efforts to God's guidance.
That's a beautiful example of how surrender can transform not just circumstances, but also our perceptions and connections with others. It seems that surrender not only changes what we do, but also how we see the world.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of walking in faith with God. Surrender allows us to see the world through His eyes, full of potential for miracles and filled with opportunities for growth and grace.
As we wrap up this segment and prepare to discuss God's promises of intervention, let's remember that surrender is the gateway through which God's greatest works can flow into our lives. As we continue exploring the profound themes surrounding God's unexpected miracles, we now focus on one of the most reassuring aspects of our faith: God's promise of intervention. This promise is a cornerstone that upholds believers during trials and tribulations.
Absolutely. And these promises are scattered generously throughout the Scriptures, providing a solid foundation for our trust in God. One of the most direct promises comes from Deuteronomy 31:6, where God commands us to be strong and courageous, not fearful or dismayed, because the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not fail you or forsake you.
That's incredibly powerful. It tells us that no matter the circumstances, we are not alone. God is actively involved, not just as a passive observer, but as a dynamic force in our lives.
Indeed, and this active involvement is often where we see His miracles unfold. In the New Testament, we find Jesus repeatedly assuring His followers of this promise. In Matthew 28:20, He tells His disciples, "And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." It's a promise that extends beyond His physical presence to His enduring spiritual presence in our lives.
This enduring presence suggests a form of intervention that isn't always marked by dramatic miracles, but is often characterized by the quiet, sustaining grace that helps us persevere.
Right. And it's important to recognize both forms of intervention, the spectacular and the subtle. In times of quiet despair or routine days, knowing that God intervenes can transform our mundane experiences into encounters with the divine.
How can believers remain open and attentive to these interventions, especially in today's fast-paced world?
Staying connected through prayer, meditation, and regular scripture reading are essential practices. They help us maintain a spiritual sensitivity to God's actions in our lives. Also, community plays a critical role. Sharing experiences with fellow believers can help us recognize patterns of divine intervention that we might overlook on our own.
Community is indeed powerful. It provides validation and can often echo the promises of God through voices we trust.
Exactly. Another scripture that reinforces God's promise to intervene is Romans 8:28, which assures us that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. This doesn't mean that everything that happens is good, but that God can use every circumstance to bring about a greater good.
That's a profound thought, finding the good that God is cultivating through our challenges. Can you share an example where this promise has visibly played out?
Certainly. There's the story of a young man who suffered a serious injury that ended his sports career, an event that seemed devastating at the time. However, this led him to discover a passion for coaching, where he impacts young athletes, not just athletically, but also spiritually and emotionally. In his despair, God intervened, not by removing the challenge, but by guiding him to a new purpose that was aligned with his deeper calling.
What a wonderful example of Romans 8:28 in action. It shows that God's interventions are intricately woven into the fabric of our lives, often in ways we can only understand in hindsight.
It truly does. And as we encourage our listeners to trust in these promises, let's remember that God's interventions are promises of his faithfulness, reminders that he is actively working in our lives, even when we are not fully aware of it.
As we conclude this segment and prepare to discuss the nature of miracles, let's hold on to the assurance that God's promises are not just ancient words, but living truths that actively shape our everyday existence. Welcome back to Faith Frontiers. In this segment, we explore the miraculous, those extraordinary moments where God's intervention is undeniably visible. Miracles serve as powerful reminders of God's presence and power in our lives. They can be grand and awe-inspiring, or subtle yet profound. Let's dive deeper into understanding the nature of miracles and how we can recognize them in our own lives.
Absolutely. And when we talk about miracles, it's essential to recognize that they don't always look the way we might expect. They're not all parting seas or burning bushes. Sometimes they're found in the healing words of a friend or an unexpected resolution to a difficult situation.
That's a great point. C.S Lewis once noted in his book, Miracles, that the central miracle asserted by Christians is the incarnation. Everything else is preparation for this, or results from this. This perspective helps us understand that the miraculous can be both a divine act and a deeply personal experience.
Indeed, and that personal dimension is what makes miracles so profound. They are individual signs of God's love and care for us. For instance, in the Gospel of John, the first miracle Jesus performs is turning water into wine at a wedding, a personal and family celebration. It's a clear demonstration of how God cares about our joys and our needs.
It's fascinating how such miracles show God's involvement in the intimate details of life. How can believers stay open to recognizing these miracles?
Staying open requires a combination of faith, awareness, and gratitude. Faith to believe in the impossible, awareness to see God at work even in the small details, and gratitude to acknowledge and celebrate every act of divine intervention as a miracle.
And how does this understanding change the way we live our daily lives?
When we start to see life as a series of potential miracles, our perspective shifts. We move from a place of scarcity and fear to one of abundance and faith. We begin to view every good turn, every moment of relief, every instance of unexpected joy as a miracle. This shift in perspective can lead to a more fulfilling and spiritually enriched life.
That sounds incredibly empowering. Do you have a story that encapsulates this approach to miracles?
Yes, there's a story about a woman who was struggling financially and emotionally. One day, she received an anonymous donation that exactly covered an urgent bill. This act, seemingly small and mundane, was a miracle to her. It was a timely reminder of God's provision and a prompt that she was not forgotten by Him.
What a beautiful example of how God works through others to perform miracles. It shows that we too can be conduits for miracles in the lives of those around us.
Exactly. Our actions, no matter how small, can be part of God's miraculous workings. Being aware that we can be agents of miracles changes how we interact with the world. It challenges us to be kinder, more generous, and more attuned to the needs of others.
As we wrap up this segment, let's encourage our listeners to both seek and be a part of the miracles around them. Whether you're on the receiving end or the giving end, your involvement in miracles can bring light and hope, not just to your life, but also to those around you.
And remember, every miracle, big or small, is a testament to God's active presence in our world. Embrace them, celebrate them, and let them reinforce your faith.
Thank you for that powerful insight. As we move to our final segment, we'll discuss the invitation to expect miracles and how embracing this mindset can transform our spiritual journey. Welcome back to Faith Frontiers. As we conclude today's episode on God's unexpected miracles, we delve into a crucial aspect of our spiritual journey, the invitation to expect miracles. This mindset isn't just about hoping for the best, it's about living with the anticipation that God is actively at work in our lives, ready to do the unimaginable.
Exactly. Expecting miracles isn't about wishful thinking, it's rooted in a deep-seated faith that recognizes God's omnipotence and His desire to be intimately involved in our lives. C.S. Lewis emphasized that faith is essentially about stepping into the unknown and trusting God to be there. It's about expecting His divine presence to manifest in both clear and subtle ways.
That's a beautiful way to frame it. How can cultivating this expectation of miracles change a person's day-to-day life?
When we expect miracles, our perspective on life fundamentally changes. We begin to look for God's hand in everything. This doesn't mean we live in a constant search for signs and wonders, but rather that we maintain a hopeful, open heart. This openness can transform ordinary moments into extraordinary encounters with grace.
It sounds like this mindset could really enhance our ability to cope with challenges and appreciate blessings.
Absolutely. For instance, when faced with a difficult situation, instead of despairing, someone expecting miracles might see it as an opportunity for God to work. This expectation keeps our spirits buoyant and our hearts receptive to solutions that defy simple logic.
Can you share an example of how expecting miracles has made a real difference in someone's life?
Certainly. There was a family who faced the heartbreaking challenge of a serious medical diagnosis. Instead of succumbing to hopelessness, they clung to the promise of God's healing power. They expected a miracle, not necessarily a cure, but a miracle in coping and finding joy in their daily lives despite the illness. And miraculously, they found their capacity for joy and resilience expanded beyond what they thought possible. Their story inspired their community, reminding everyone of the power of hope and expectation.
That's incredibly moving. It shows that miracles can also be about finding new strength and joy, even when the circumstances don't change.
Precisely. And this brings us to the spiritual discipline of gratitude. Expecting miracles should be coupled with recognizing and being thankful for them when they occur. This gratitude not only enriches our own lives, but also bears witness to others of God's goodness.
As we prepare to close this episode, what would you say to our listeners to encourage them to embrace this invitation to expect miracles?
I would say, start small. Begin each day with a prayer that opens your heart to the possibilities of God's intervention. Ask Him to reveal His presence in your daily life. And as you witness these moments, share them. Your testimonies can lift others and build a community of faith that celebrates every sign of God's loving involvement.
Thank you for those inspiring words. To all our listeners, I challenge you to carry this message into your life. Expect miracles, be grateful for them, and let your life be a testament to the infinite possibilities that faith in God can bring.
It's been a pleasure discussing these uplifting themes. Remember, God is always at work, and His miracles are a gift for those with the faith to see them.
As we close today's inspiring journey through the landscape of miracles and divine intervention, I hope each story and insight has touched your heart and ignited a renewed sense of wonder and anticipation in your spiritual walk.
It's been an absolute pleasure to explore these profound themes with you all. Remember, God's realm is where the mundane meets the miraculous, and every day holds the potential for something extraordinary.
Indeed, and as we part ways, I encourage you to carry the lessons and stories shared today into your everyday life. Look for God's hand in the small details and the large challenges. Embrace the unexpected and open your heart to the miraculous. Doing so can transform your perspective on everything.
And don't forget, faith is about action. It's about living out the belief that God is ever present and capable of more than we can ever imagine. Start each day with a prayer for openness to the miracles God has prepared for you.
To all our listeners, thank you for spending this time with us. We hope you leave this episode feeling uplifted and encouraged. Please don't hesitate to share your own stories of miracles, big or small, on our social media platforms or in the comments below. Your experiences can inspire and encourage others in their faith journey.
Yes, and remember that each shared story of a miracle can be a beacon of hope for someone in need. You never know who might find solace and strength from hearing about God's work in your life.
Subscribe to our podcast for more discussions like this, and don't forget to like and share this episode if it has inspired you. Each share helps spread encouragement and faith in a world that dearly needs it.
Thank you once again for joining us. May you walk in faith, expecting miracles, and witnessing the extraordinary unfold in your life. God bless.
Until next time, keep looking for those divine moments of intervention. Farewell, and may your days be filled with wonder and faith.